don't be shy. Good afternoon, Design Outlook, and welcome to today's debate. Now, my name is Trudi, and I'm going to be your host today for something we have never seen in the history of Design Outlook, and dare I say, something we will never see again. And that is today's debate on does design need a saviour? Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty, the hustle and the bustle, I would like to take a moment to appreciate the lands on which we're meeting today. And that is the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay respects to their elders past and present. It really is an honour to be here debating and arguing on these incredible lands, and I hope that as a community we continue to debate and argue as allies on behalf of First Nations people so that they may have the voice that they deserve in these lands where sovereignty was never ceded. So, in a moment, I am about to bring out two incredible teams of designers, debaters, all-round good people, to debate the topic, Design Needs a Saviour. Now, if you have not been to a debate since the realms of puberty, it is okay. I have got you. I'm going to be here to help you with all the rules, regulations. We're going to have a bit of fun. And don't worry, we will talk you through it. It is just your job to sit back, relax, enjoy the coiffery, and have a good time. Although, when I say enjoy the coiffery, I don't want you to be too quiet here. We want you to get active and involved. So, if you want to guffaw, hoo-ha, laugh, cheer, boo, whatever, get involved. We draw the line, no stage jumping, no nudie running. Other than that, it's all yours, because actually, ultimately, you are going to decide who wins today's debate. Oh, yeah, ooh, oh, yes, ooh, this is a surprise for someone down there. Oh, what, me? Ooh. Yes, you have a very important job here, so pay attention and have a good time. Now, before we dive into the deep end, let's get our little hands dirty in the topic. Now, design needs a saviour. Let's pull this apart a bit. A saviour. What do we mean by saviour? Well, the Oxford Dictionary says a saviour is a person who saves someone or something from danger or difficulty. Now, similar words include rescuer, liberator, emancipator, champion. Now, some would say that the saviour of design has already been and gone. Some people say, well, it's Steve Jobs, it's David Carson, Stephen Sagmeister. In fact, one gentleman this morning suggested that Mr. Squiggle was the saviour of design because he taught us that the world looks better upside down. There's a bunch of Gen Zers going, who? So does the saviour of design need to be a white man, as written by books about other white men? Or is it that the saviour of design has already planted the seeds in decolonisation as we are starting to understand the design gems of Hindu history or Indigenous knowing, ancestral placemaking? And wasn't AI supposed to be the saviour of us all? What happened? It seems to have filled us all with this panic and dread as it takes our jobs and makes us do everything faster, leaner, smarter. And what of that design? So how do we determine design in this debate? Well, how long is a piece of string? So now as design, frontiers, new horizons, where are the edges? And do we need a saviour because everybody's discovering the beauty and magic of design? So much so that Greg from reception, he wants to talk to you because he got everybody's input on the multicultural morning tea invite and he wants to talk about his co-design career. Or is it that we've forgotten that design are the cool kids that hang at the water cooler and somehow make socks and sandals look cool, and who make black in any guy's ultimate, and who spend most of their day going, you know what we could do? Or is it that we need a saviour because we've swapped those sandals and socks for beige attire, and now we're thumping on the door, right, demanding that the weird kid be given a seat at the table? There are so many questions. So for this debate, we are going to define design as a holistic thing, as a community, as a whole, as a paradigm, as a problem solver. We're going to keep it within the community. We're not going to dive into the nitty-gritty. We're going to keep it as Design Outlook has today, as a whole. So are you ready, Design Outlook? Oh, yeah, pretty good. Much better response. I expected one person in the front row to go, yep, pretty good post-lunch. Let's give it another try. Are you ready, Design Outlook? damn straight because we are going to hustle and bustle and argue, god damn it. Let me bring on the teams. So, firstly, representing the negative team. This is the team that says design does not need a saviour. To that, it is please welcome to the stage. We have Bridget Engler and Chris Kostuna. Please welcome them to the stage.
Very good.
Great. Grab a seat. So we have our negative team. And now, please welcome to the stage our positive team, the team that says, yes, design does need a saviour. Please welcome Brad Alfonso and Sue Ismiak. Yay! This team got the most mums in the audience. Awesome. Oh, thanks. Do I need it? Great, it's not for me. Okay, cool. So let me tell you a little bit about these awesome people. We've got Brad here. Hello. He brought a fan club. It's like I don't need to tell you about Brad. But he's a senior service designer manager at Bupa. Describes himself as insightful, purposeful and pragmatic, and is running a workshop tomorrow, by the way. We've got Sue. Sue is a senior research advisor at the Climate Works Centre. Got that right? Yeah. And her passion lies in bringing together different practices for meaningful collaborations. Over on this side, we've got Chris, who's a strategic designer at Cognizant and began understanding customer experience by answering phones for his parents' business at age 9, which I love. And finally, Bridget, who's a futurist and my favourite word, a pracademic. And she's at Swinburne. She's curious about designing in crisis. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is your design team. Before we kick in, let me give you a few of the rules. What's going to happen from here? We are going to invite the first speaker for the positive team. That's Brad. He's going to come up here. He's going to have 10 minutes to give you his argument as to why design needs a saviour. Following that, we will have our first speaker for the negative team. That's Chris. He's going to come up here, 10 minutes, on why design doesn't need a saviour. From there, we're going to give them 5 minutes to confer with their team, play around, make up a rebuttal argument, and you and I are going to hang out, chat, whatever. We'll work it out. After that, we're going to get the second speakers to come up from each team and rebut the argument. Now, let me tell you this. Firstly, neither team knows what the other one is going to argue. And secondly, the second speakers, the whole thing is done improvisationally. It's going to be exciting. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yes. Oh, there we go. Yes. Now, I have a surprise for the debaters. They don't know this yet. But in homage of Finbar and Doreen this morning, they talked about creating a landscape, a multitudinal, what did they call it? A symphony of intelligence, about getting multimodal. Then they created this incredible soundscape. And I thought, you know what? I'm not going to let them be the only one who is multimodal and create their own soundscape. So our debaters are going to create their own soundscape as they go. I have for each debater one party popper. And this they are going to use when somebody, or their teammate, because that's all they've got, when their teammate says something really amazing, they're going to have one chance. One chance to party pop. Right?
Thank you.
And then you can all watch me scrape it up at the end. Sorry, Grant. And then, of course, that wouldn't be fair because this is a debate, right? So we want to get real. So if the opposition says something that you don't like, the negative team, one shot each. And the positive team, one shot each. Now it's getting real. All right. They are going to have 10 minutes to talk. A bell is going to go at 8 minutes, a bigger bell at 10 minutes. At 11 minutes, I'm going to start heckling. At 11 and a half, I'm going to physically come on and tackle them off the stage. Okay? That's how that's going to work. And of course, we want to know what they're playing for, right? Right? It's big, guys. It's incredible trophies. One for each of the winning teams. I'm going to put it over here so that they can stare at the glory. I think it's time to get up our first person, our first speaker. Ready for this? Please welcome to the stage our first speaker, Brad.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
The fabulous Trudi Boatwright, everyone. Can we get a round of applause for Trudi?
You might use that one because I'm going
Thanks for setting the vibe. And welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining our debate. There's a lot of competition for the crowd, so we're glad that we could get a few people in to see us. Now, let's just get straight to it. We're at a crossroads. Are we at a crossroads? Design community, are we at a crossroads? We are. Thank you. Now, my phone just went off. So, we're at a crossroads. Now, we can continue down this path, or we can tread a new one. We face challenges not only as a design community, but also as a global one. Immense pressures, geopolitical tension at a height, economic disparity, technological advancements beyond imagination, and of course, climate change. Now, these problems are daunting, but in some ways, they are not unprecedented. Now, let me take you all back a bit. Let's go back to the 14th century, where creatives of another era had similar challenges. But they banded together to create a cultural transformation that propelled man from the Middle Ages into the modern era. That period coined the Renaissance. Now, Brad, where are you going with this? What was interesting here is this cultural transformation was not one single man, woman, or entity. It was the power of a collective. The collective was the saviour. Ladies and gentlemen, today, our collective here is the saviour. Today, yes, this is our Renaissance. This is our design Renaissance. So, sit with that for a moment. What do I need to do, Brad? It sounds great. You're talking about the Renaissance. I didn't really pay attention to high school history. Let me take you to school. So, what do we need to do? Really simply, design needs to think about problems holistically. We've heard it here in different shapes and forms throughout the day in all of our talks. Every designer here, how are your design decisions thinking about the bigger picture? How are you thinking about the broader ecosystem? You see, unfortunately, we've been reduced down to tactical implementations. A lot of our work might be centered around a single user touch point, subsets of journeys, looking at experiences, lots of effort, lots of time, lots of resource on these pieces. Important work, but not holistic. So, this is limiting us. It's limiting the power of what design is, what we can truly do. Let's take a learning from, now I'm going to go back. We're going to go back in time to some OG designers from the Renaissance. I'm going to talk about Machiavelli. Now, for the hip-hop fans, I'm not talking about Tupac. I'm talking about Machiavelli. Now, Machiavelli, you might even say he was a strategic designer of some description. He even threw in some content design. Now,
have you read The Prince?
Well, interpretation, right? But what he did, he was able to strategically write for policy, strategic recommendations. Don't know if he had a PowerPoint pack for that. He did recommendations around understanding diplomacy. He wrote with that understanding of how that would impact warfare policy planning. And later, he also wrote with the understanding of how that would all impact financial and monetary systems. He connected all of those dots with a single rationale of how to understand the mechanics of power in the political sphere. Now, I'm not Machiavellian by any chance, but I think it's interesting to take note. In the Renaissance, we had this man. that was able to connect these dots and think holistically. I like you like that one, Bridget. So, now, but what does that mean for me? How am I going to bring it back to what I'm doing today? Now, we're all designers. We're all looking at different experiences within our businesses. Let's say you're looking at an onboarding experience. Now, at any organization, you love your onboarding experience. It's really important to you, right? You're looking at that. You might be working on that flow. You might be looking at an EDM and the design of that and how that's going out. Now, designers, you're looking at that, and that's fantastic. It's really important work. Are we able to lift up, lift out, and think about how does that EDM or that flow ladder up to my brand promise? How does that EDM or flow ladder up to the value proposition that the customer joined our organization for? How does that EDM or flow deliver to the customer the reason that they want to stay with us? It's just a decision, but it's us thinking holistically. So, when we're able to do this effectively, we start to prove the value of design. We start to make that connection with what we're doing with a higher order. Number 2, design as an operating system. Now, we have challenges operating in our current systems. We've been slapped on, we've been bolted on to existing frameworks, existing ways of working. And it comes down to us always continuously trying to prove ourselves within those systems. Now, what we know is within a system, it comes down to the way that the work flows. The way the work flows from one point to the other through a system. I'm moving around a lot, the lights are just like banging my eyes. So, how it works through the system. Now, designers, how are we using design as an operating system within our organizations to connect? Now, this might be split by silos. However, how can we bring it together with our crafts? Question. We work on problems within a system in an organization. We have crafts that come together to deliver as a design system. Question to you all. Have we complicated it? Have we limited ourselves? We have crafts that run roles, that run remits, that have specific outputs and expectations and KPIs. Have these invisible structures we've created, are they creating limitations or are they enabling us? That's the question. Let me talk about another Renaissance OG. Someone that transcended some of these crafts. I'm talking about Michelangelo. You might say that he was a service designer. You might say he's an experienced designer, depending on the JD, depending where you apply, depending who's running the shop there. Different roles. But not only did he play a strategic role in guiding the design direction of the architecture and the buildings that he wanted to be part of, but he considered the way the light came in. He considered the texture of the walls, the materials used, and he worked with everyone building and crafting those chapels to be able to enable him to paint the most beautiful designs for maximum impact for his end users who still enjoy his work today. But he connected all of those skills that many designers have through a single flow and a single delivery. They're still admired today. So, how can you replicate this today in your current role? What business objective can you settle up to? And how can you drive that strategy view through to implementation? Holding the keys all the way, using the many subsets of design. Many subsets of design. I'm getting a buzzer beater over here. Now, if we're able to do that as a single vehicle for delivery, a single design operating system, we'll prove our value. Lastly, how do we understand the system that we operate within? For design to deliver value, we need to double down on our most human quality, a quality that cannot be replaced, and that's a deep empathy. Empathy is our most powerful quality. Empathy of users, empathy of business, empathy of organizations, and empathy of industry. Practically, understanding what your business does to flow work through. How do you connect with the patterns that exist within your organization and use that as a vehicle to create change? We saw this with OG Galileo. Now, Galileo understood what drove his environment, what they centered around. He understood that the earth actually revolves around the sun. Now, designers, we all operate in systems where we have stakeholders that believe the organization revolves around them, revolves around their agendas. How do you find the sun in your organization and realign your mission to deliver to that sun? I'm being called out. I'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
Lastly, rocking it out. Community. This is a call to action. Yes, we need a change. We need a savior. That savior is everyone in the room. Take action. Change your behaviors. Your behavior becomes your identity. That identity becomes our legacy. We are the saviors. Thank you.
Brad, everybody, well done.
Well done.
All that talk of empathy, and I thought, shit, I'm going to have to tackle the first speaker. But no, he pulled it in at 11 and a half minutes. Awesome. Thank you, Brad, for your arguments, particularly about Machiavelli. Didn't you have like 7 wives or something? Certainly keeping it simple there. Okay, next we have our first speaker for the negative team, who's going to come up and give his side of the argument. Please welcome to the floor, Chris.
Good afternoon, everyone. When we had this call to talk about the topic of design needs a savior, I was actually quite excited by it, and I was actually really hard no, like from the very first moment. And my mind went back to this photography exhibition I went to years ago about the punk movement, and there was this beautiful print of this punk taken from behind, and he was like the most punk you could ever be a punk, right? Shaved hair on the sides, massive mohawk, black leather jacket, studdeds all over it. On the back of it, it had with this scrawling white writing on there with a paintbrush that said, "Don't believe in God, believe in yourself." And that, my friends, fellow designers, is what we're here to talk about today. Just like that punk, design does not need a savior. Design just needs to believe in itself some more. Like the notion of design itself needing a savior is misleading. It kind of actually disempowers us. It thinks that, like we as designers who love to solve problems can't do it and need to rely on somebody else to come in and forge the way forward. And sure, we're not saying that design hasn't got problems. Like it's always been there. Designers are always going to be pointing them out. We're proud problem solvers, so we'll always be there picking and nitpicking away and discovering them. And, in our industry, we fix problems for our clients and for our partners and for our businesses that we work for, but sometimes, we rarely get the chance to fix them for ourselves. It's like it's the saying of the plumbers with dripping taps or the web designers whose website is constantly under construction. So for us, not identifying the things that's wrong with design is us not being true to our nature. Sure, it can be overwhelming and disheartening when it feels like, we're doing it for everybody else, but we shouldn't all of a sudden think we need a savior to do that, surely. Surely it's on us. Surely it's something that we have to take care of and step up to the plate. Because design does fix up. It evolves. It changes. It discards stuff that isn't valuable. So if you just take a step back, right, let's think about design over the years. Now, like I'm 44 or whatever, something like that. And when I started design, there was things like you had graphic design, that's what I did. You had industrial design, this thing called HCI, which I didn't even know what it was at that point in time, maybe architecture, maybe interior design. That's what design was for us back then. But now we've got all these titles which are really hard to explain at Christmas time at the dinner table, right? Like strategic design, the community engagement design, and all these kind of things that are really, really tricky. But they all are crucially important to moving the world forward by design. So, and with that has come new methods, new tools and frameworks and digital things that come to help us along the way. And the most amazing part of all of that is sometimes we're working on something and we haven't got the thing that we need. And what do? We design it. We create it. We've got a new thing in our toolbox. So what? We don't need saviors for that. Design doesn't need saviors. Design needs designers. All right? Am I right? Radio. Where were we? Thank you for that, by the way. So, and it's also a collective effort. And, thanks, Brad, for pointing that out. It is a collective effort. It's no singular savior involved with that one. And sometimes, we really have to think about design as like that potluck dinner. Like you think about our design teams. Everybody comes along with a certain dish. We want it to be like that, like a potluck dinner. We don't want it to be like all the cooking done by one person and then rock up with like a really dry meatloaf. That would be just horrible. So on the contrary, let's think about it the other way. What would it look like if there was a savior? Firstly, this conference wouldn't exist, right? You'd be stuck with me as your savior. And I'll be up here and I'll be espousing all this stuff to you guys. We wouldn't have this wonderful conference that we have, which was curated and crowdsourced with all these different perspectives. No. You're stuck with me, right? So this lectern is now my pulpit. And I'm going to give you some of my, I'm going to espouse some things to the masses. So, just say stuff like here and go, all apps, all buttons and apps will have to have rounded corners. And you'll have to go, oh, yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I really like that idea, yeah. Inter is an amazing font. It's highly legible. Use it for everything. And you go, yeah, sounds really good, yeah. And you'll go, and I'll go, Canva's okay to use sometimes. If you need to quickly get things done, you'll be like, oh, okay, here's this fucking guy. And this will lead to two things, right? First and foremost, one of the challenges we might have today, we say we've got there's a bit of a sea of sameness. Well, I'll tell you what, if you're all just following a savior and their instructions, that sea of sameness is just going to become vanilla avenue. Everything's just going to be the same. And secondly, there's going to be people out there that will disagree with what I have just said. And all of a sudden, there's agitation and dispiritedness and, no camaraderie. And we don't want that at all. So, and anyway, okay, it's not me being your savior. So how would we select this savior in the first place? Who would it be? How would we pick it? Well, you could have something like, a design reality show, I guess. You could call it Design Idol or something like that, where aspiring design saviors could, be put through the challenges of doing tasks every week, and us designers get to vote them off. But, that might not work. It's just like this, the singing version of Australian Idol. The winner is never really that good anyway. So we'd also have to be wary of false idols. The ones that self-proclaim, I am the design savior. You all know the types, right? Right? They kind of live on LinkedIn, yeah? They're the ones that were the Web 3.0 gurus a couple of years ago, and now they're the AI guys. And then they would be design saviors now. Or we could even look at designers from the past or even present day. So you mentioned David Carson before. Yeah, he'd be all right as a savior. It's a bit messy though, right? You can't really read it. Jessica Walsh is pretty cool, but I don't really like bright colours, so I'm not going to do that either. Dieter Rams is probably a good candidate, but I reckon he's a bit grumpy, possibly, for that. And then there's even Tim Brown from IDEO. And maybe this is an example of where, a savior of a person having too much of a pedestal. We've all been probably reading too much from the Gospel of IDEO and human-centered design thinking books that they've had, and maybe that's kind of why we are where we are today. Some of the challenges that we might have. So, what should we do instead? Right? It's all very well and good for me to stand up here and be contrarian. But you know what? We should just have a solution. And it really is about this. It's not about believing that we need a design savior. It's about designers believing in themselves and then design again. It's as simple as that. Saying we need a savior is passing the buck on our potential and that we are the generation that could be the ones that evolve design further. Relying on a savior will just lead to complacency and hinder our innovation. Instead, we should be focusing on building ourselves up, redesigning ourselves, and moving the world forward. So what does that look like? Well, let's start about how we can build some confidence and self-belief and some excitement about design again. Some things we can do about celebrating our collective achievements. We can be encouraging continuous learning, promote a growth mindset, foster a supportive community, and look at mentors. Now, this is a bit of a shout out to Felix from ADP, who's part of this conference. Fantastic platform to start connecting with other designers out there and start sharing some knowledge. And that's why we're here today, and that's what's really fantastic about being at Design Outlook. Being here today is taking those small actions to rebuilding and to building our confidence in design and taking our place. So I conclude. Design does not need a savior. It needs confident, self-reliant designers who believe in their ability to create and innovate. By fostering self-belief and confidence, we will empower ourselves and our community to overcome any challenge. Let's discard the fallacy that we need a savior. We need designers to save design. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chris. Can I just say, I love how punk Chris is, and he doesn't even know his age. Like, whatever, I'm whatever, 40, I don't know, 40 whatever. I'm going to be 20 whatever for the rest of my life, I think. And also, there's some really strong arguments there, right? Who would hate to miss out on Auntie Flo's Moroccan fish eyeball soup at Christmas potluck? Right? There's some strong stuff there, and I had to have a little giggle because I wonder what Machiavelli would think about living in Vanilla Lane. Could be an interesting combo. Okay, so what happens from here? These guys get 5 minutes to confer, to talk. I am setting the timer because we are time constrained, and we are going to discuss amongst ourselves. Where do we sit? How are we feeling? Does design need a saviour or not? Sometimes feels like similar arguments, but yet very different angles. Are we going with Michelangelo, his pizza, lights, etc. over here? Are we having a renaissance and finding it within ourselves and our empathy? Or are we going, fuck it, let's just fix it all. Let's just sit in the potluck. What are we thinking? What are our thoughts on this? Here we come across 2 very interesting points. Has human-centered design, have we all been ideoed? I've heard this argument before. Or is it not? Is it just that we're in that sort of fuzzy front end and that actually this is all going to turn out okay? I would love to hear what you think. I'm going to do that crazy thing now where I come into the audience and talk to you. If that makes you, excuse my language, shit your pants, I'm not going to come to you. You didn't come to a conference today to feel uncomfortable. But I would love to know, where do you sit so far? Who's won you over? What are your thoughts and what's happening? Somewhere I have here comes a microphone and I haven't set the timer. 2:06, I'll just have to, I don't trust myself. Hang on. All right, here we go. Let's have a little chat about what's going on down here. It's on. Would anyone like to talk to me and tell me how you're feeling? What are your thoughts so far? Where's Team Brad? Where's Team Brad's? Is this Brad's? Hello. We've got Team Brad here. This is for you. Here you go. Would you like to have a chat with me? Tell me about, what are your thoughts? You've heard Brad speak and now you've heard Chris speak. What are your thoughts?
I actually think they make very similar arguments.
Oh.
I think that the differentiation of what Brad here is talking about is collectively we need to come together and make a decision on how we move forward with design, how we bring design to the forefront of, future life. And then Chris made some good points. as well. I can't remember any of them off the top of my head because I've been put on the spot.
well,
But
coming from Team
made
Brad
me-
here.
it was good. Actually, you had a catch line that I think should be on your next shirt. Can't remember what you said, but the pop went off. So put that on a shirt. I'd like to buy it.
Would anyone like to? Did anybody have that moment of going? Note to self: review LinkedIn content. Just me? Okay, cool. Okay, so Team Brad. So Team Brad's you're staying Team Brad?
Look, I'm in the middle. I really like Bridget's hair.
Oh,
And I really like Sue's shoes. You know, I'm just because I know Brad and he's my boss doesn't mean mean that I automatically gonna go for this guy. I'm still in the middle because I'm in contract negotiations. So.
Oh, the bonuses this year. Ding, 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 ding.
Wink.
Right.
Can you see me winking from here?
Awesome. Thank you very much for your opinion. Interesting one, that. Design, do we all need to come together as a collective? I don't know. What would the world be without some of those really funky designs? Like, I mean, where would we go without the pickle sandwiches and the, those stupid box cars that came and went? I mean, there's some stuff that we really need in our lives, right? Would anyone else, who's ready to share their opinion? Is there anyone, Team Chris over here? He had some hoots and hollers from over here. Would anyone like to share their opinion? Tell me what you're thinking. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be your boss. Oh, this guy, he's being dobbed in. Hi.
Hi.
Do you want to have a chat with me?
Would love to. Why not?
Great, that's
Let's do it.
lucky. Oh, here we are, just us and 700 people. It's cool. What are your thoughts? What do you think's going on here?
I think they're both valid arguments. I really like the topic about whether design needs a savior or not. And I think there's a lot of merit in the ideology of having superstar designers that kind of shaped our industry from past. And I like the examples that Brad drew from, a lot of historical context. But I also feel the way we have democratized design over the years is quite interesting. And we're at the crossroads where we're thinking whether we should be listening to people before we design or whether we should be reading between the lines or actually solving the problems. And that's where I think the conundrum is. So, but both the teams had really good argument points. But I still think there are some underlying themes that I would be more interested to listen to now. So.
Oh, great. Oh, lucky for you. There's a second section. Ta-da!
So lucky.
Excellent. Round of applause for this gentleman. Thank you for sharing your opinion. Because that is an interesting point. Can you have too much democracy? Can you have too many opinions? I don't know about you, but I can't have a game of Scrabble with my family without all-out war. Right? Is that something that's happening with design? Is there a balance between what we think people need and what we hear people say? I don't know. That's you guys, not me. However, we're back. You ready to go, teams? Fantastic. Thank you to our two contributors. Congratulations to the woman who just got a promotion. And we are back for round two. Please welcome, with an improvised rebuttal. This ain't easy, people. An improvised rebuttal to rebut what Chris had to say. We are going to invite the positive team. Up comes Sue for her 10 minutes. Give her a round of applause.
Thank you, everyone. Very valid points I have to start with, because I thought about this topic quite a bit. Like, what do we mean by saving and what do we mean by danger, actually? So what are we really saving design from in that sense? Are these really the literal challenges of design industry that arrived at a stagnant point where it's more like a subtle threat of the erosion of critical thinking, maybe, or the creativity that we are losing? And it's like a little bit similar to saying saving the planet, because I'm currently working in the climate industry. So at ClimateWorks, working as a climate researcher, I'll get back to that. But it's like, can we really save the planet? Or is that, like George Carlin said, sort of like an arrogant attempt of the humans saying we're going to save the planet? I think Mother Nature is going to take care of Earth anyways. It's more of the existential angst that we are trying to really address as the humans. And this is a similar problem with designers as well. So what is our new identity right now? And how are we really operating as designers and what is our really role, what it means to be a designer even. So I'm going to invite everyone to do a little bit of self-critic in that sense, and also referring back to how the design industry evolves, because I started my journey not even as a designer, actually, as a computer scientist. So I was just building things mindlessly, programming, developing applications, and just like looking, okay, that's great, it's functional. But who's going to use it? It's actually looking also very ugly. What is the look and feel aspect of it? And that sort of like curiosity that makes you think about why are we doing what we're doing is getting you to the next stage. So then I started thinking about, okay, how can we make this more usable, user-friendly for the people? And because I was like coding back then, we didn't have the notion of UI, UX design. So you slowly start thinking about like designing the whole experience. And back then it was called web design. So UI, UX design, and all of these things is actually designing the whole experience around it. So once I got to that stage, the next point was, okay, but do we really need to design this product? So is that really solving the right problem? And then you get to the next stage of where that product really sits. Is that a digital application? Should it be a digital application? What is the broader context around it, and where does it sit? So you start thinking about not only the products, but the systems as well. And once you think about the systems, the next stage is really who are the people and who are the processes, technology, everything that plays a role within that system. And then you start to really think about how complex things are and how you need to really broaden your thinking to understand the unintended consequences, the interdependencies, and all of that. So we started design as people who are consulting, bringing people together, orchestrators, and the institutionalizing of design started with, I think back in 2015 when McKinsey bought like one of the really top design agencies. And that kind of like went with Deloitte as well. And then, I think Accenture then bought Pure too. And we started introducing frameworks and processes and started really over-engineering things. And this is where we need to interfere as designers, bringing that problem-solving force back in. Because, like, how many times have you gone into a meeting and started talking about, like, what do we mean by this? What is this terminology? And, like, abbreviations, acronyms, the design jargon. That made everything so complicated that we almost, like, forgot about thinking what really we are trying to solve for. Like, I am coming across many people who are asking this question of, okay, how many journey maps do we need to create? Or what is we're really looking for at the end of this journey? So nobody's really asking, I mean, there are definitely people asking these questions, but how many journey maps do we need to create? If that's the question that we are asking, we're really not immersing ourselves with the problem itself. And with the rise of AI, and with the COVID, and with all of these changes, we are forced to question our identity anyways, because anything that we have designed so far, which is tied to the object, like these vertical design disciplines like product design, UI design, UX design, fashion design, that are tied to the hard skills, which are easily replaceable. Unfortunately, like people can easily learn Figma, and AI can replace that, or Sketch, or Adobe Suite. But what we are really missing is that generalist lens, which is tied to the soft skills like curiosity, empathy, critical thinking, strategic thinking. So what I'm actually saying, strategic design or service design, all of these like horizontal capabilities that are not really tied to the design of the object itself, is really coming from being curious about something, being able to like synthesize the information in a meaningful way, adopting a deconstructionist perspective, ability to zoom in and out, embracing ambiguity in the moment. And that is really what makes us a designer. And then the title of the designer is sort of disappearing when you think that way. So, for example, a strategic designer who is really specialized in placemaking is basically an urban designer, a good one, hopefully, or an architect. So what we should be inviting back is that critical thinking, that curiosity, to be able to say, OK, my role is a product designer, but I've done everything, the testing, the UX research, and tried to understand what the user experience is, but the problem is not really the product. It sits broader, and it's the customer service, it's the people who are not talking to each other. It's the staff at the backhand who doesn't know how to really help people or not trained well, or there are lack of resources. So that is the role of every designer in that moment, having the courage to be able to say, that's not the right problem that we are solving for. Yes, it's beyond my scope. I'm not going to be able to solve everything. I am specialized in product design, but I know who to reach out to. And this is why any designer in any vertical discipline field, like product from UX, from service design to strategic design, we should be asking the question, where is really the root cause? And if you have that curiosity, that natural curiosity that fuels you to ask why, which is ironically an engineering framework, like asking the five whys. If you have the natural curiosity, that drives you to ask these questions already. And then you organically build that organizational knowledge to understand who is responsible for solving that problem? What are the roles and responsibilities, and how do I bring these people together, or at least like nudge to be able to say, these are the people who should be working with me. So we need to bring that back, because design alone does not really need a savior. So we need to collectively be more interested in what we are solving for, more curious, to be able to address the right problem. And that's where we're at. Thank you.
Yes. Give her a round of applause. My to-do list is getting longer. Review my LinkedIn, become punk, be my own saviour, rethink my identity now, go down Vanilla Avenue. No, gone down Vanilla, that one, done. All right, here's our final speaker. Richard, coming to wrap us up and bring us home. Please welcome to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for liking my hair. Design. Thank you. We've already had a definition of a saviour and a definition of design. So I'd like to just remind everyone that the definition of a saviour was around an individual, not a collective. That doesn't mean, however, that we don't work as individuals as part of a collective, which is what a collective is. So we might be a collective of misfits. We might be a collective of seasonings that get dropped in, as design often does. But I'd also like to pick up on a couple of other points that you made as part of your argument this afternoon. If we're going to talk about critical thinking and about saving design, then let's remember that if everyone's a designer, we have to work on ourselves first. When we think about design, things like this, what does design do with the objects that we make? What's the impact on the environment and the people around us? When we design these kinds of things, do we think about who is dying making it and who is dying when they use it? Design has a responsibility for this. And it's designers as individuals who make the decisions. So to your point around the crossroads, design's probably been at a crossroads for 40 or 50 years. We are constantly making decisions about the choices that we are able to influence and the choices that we make as in our responsibility as a designer. Because design is to change, and change happens by design, whether it's in a natural system or whether it's in a system that we create as part of a design process. But of course, design is more than those processes and systems that we've heard about. Design is about the decisions and choices that lead us to the next thing, the next step, the next development. So it's not about a saviour that is going to lead that, it's ourselves that is going to lead that charge. Design has actually reinvented itself many, many times. So again, the point around the Renaissance is a valid one. But Machiavelli, seriously? As designers, do we want to be that cunning and irresponsible?
Oh, boo!
If you haven't read The Prince, do. It's a refreshing insight into the politics of the day, the politics that governs design, even if we aren't aware of it. Because design doesn't happen in a vacuum. It doesn't do these things all by itself. We have agency as designers. We can make an influence not just on the decisions and the output of those decisions, but those consequences, the unintended consequences of the design that we engage with. That whole design saviour industrial complex that we seem to live in says that a designer can parachute in somewhere and just fix a problem. We know that that's not how it works. Whether it's issues in our design system that we're working in, whether it's the arguments we have to get our concept or idea across the line. It's not as simple as just fixing a problem. And I acknowledge you've got to have a better question. You've got to have a better problem to solve, which is something that you identified. But it's, again, not as simple as that, because we shape that system. Look at where we are. We're having a discussion around, does design need a saviour? Well, I'd like to steal from some rock gods and their description of design, because if design is fine, according to Aerosmith, it's fucked up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. And that's probably the description that we've had of design from our other team here today. You did say I could be controversial. There's a couple of, come on. Design, in its broadest sense, has often just been left to this sort of sprinkling of things, whether it's sustainable design or throwing in innovation and storytelling, whatever the buzzword is. It seems to be AI quite a bit at the moment. But we can't always assume that design is inherently a good thing, particularly if we're Machiavellian in our approach. We also can't assume that design is producing good things. It's very capable of producing filter bubbles, preaching sustainability whilst furthering consumerism. Design is not a reductionist approach to anything. It's, yes, all of the tools and frameworks and things that we use, and we are constantly reinventing those and doing it well because it continues to serve what we do. But design also has to serve our world. It has to serve future generations, the voices of futures that are yet to be heard. There are people that we're designing for now. So when we think about saving design or being saviours for design, then we also need to think about design creating a world in which future generations don't need to be saved. It is a little bit like the planet. The planet will do fine without us. Design in itself might do fine without us as well. We need to understand our role and complicity in that material consumption that is delivering us a different world from maybe the one that we might have made a choice about originally. Design is also an act of transformation. It is also an act of liberation, which connects back to the definition of a designer, of a saviour. But design also needs designers to get out of our own way sometimes. We need to acknowledge our power and agency in using design as a tool for change and to lock ourselves into the opportunity to generate that change. Because design doesn't need a saviour. It needs undesigning and reconceiving using principles of design justice and design growth or degrowth and decolonisation and decolonial sustainability. Design isn't going to save the world. Let's be honest. The world's not a great place right now. And one of the most successful design artefacts is an AK-47. I know, I'm always the bad news bear, but it's a good piece of design. But design is complicit in delivering the world that we're in. And the practice of design contribute to that over and over again. So design doesn't need saving. We as people need to think about the decisions we make, which I've said a couple of times already. If design is in the C-suite, then why are decisions being made that lead us to the world that we're in? Can we influence better in the C-suite so that design as a practice is not just constructed and created and manufactured, it's actually seen as a part of an emergent system, or the emergent properties of design can be built into the things that we do. The other thing about a saviour is, as Chris had pointed out, it's a little bit monopolistic. It ends up almost dictatorial. and allows us as designers, or gives us permission to abdicate responsibility. Oh, it wasn't me that did that, it was the design that did that. Actually, we make those decisions that lead to the design having those influences. Design as a commercial practice, because that's what it is, it's a commercial practice. It's not independent of human activity and agency. Saviours should inspire. And my worry is that design gets criticised, and fairly, but also unfairly. However, it also fosters imitation and false idols. And we really don't want false idols and feet of clay around design. I think there's a bit of trouble in that area already. If we set up design as a hero, then we're setting it up to fail. So if we save design, we're going to perpetuate that cycle. Design, in fact, might be a design problem. And my worry is that saviours encourage betrayal. And if we're going to worry about betrayal, then maybe design will end up hosting its own Last Supper. Thank you.
Well done.
There we go. Something light and cheery to end us on. Please give Bridget a round of applause. Okay, it is decision time. We are already over time, so you don't have any thinking time. This is it. Step up, be your own saviours, and vote accordingly with your hands, your cheers, your whoops. You ready? Let's find out who the winner of today's incredible debate is. Design needs a saviour. If you, like this young lady who's got her promotion today, would like to vote for the positive team, give them a round of applause. Yes, 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 yes. If you have been convinced by the punk AK-47 team over in the negative side, and you think design does not need a saviour, round of applause.
Why didn't we have that last 5 minutes?
It was the jiving and the AK-47s, wasn't it? I meant round of applause.
Thank you very much.
Round of applause for our winners. Don't worry, I have something for you too. One thing that I think has been made clear in all our arguments today is that whether you are Machiavellian, Michelangelo, whether you are Aerosmith or punk, the main thing is be your own saviour in whatever way that looks like and stay curious. Thank you so much.
Thank you.